The day is September 24th, 2023. The Denver Broncos have made their way down to Miami to play a Week 3 1 p.m. Sunday football game, and to most people, this was a game that had dreadfully low expectations. Not that people expected a bad game, but inside the first 5 weeks of any NFL season, teams are still trying to find themselves, shake off a bit of rust maybe, refine their rhythm, and really anything can happen. But even with low expectations, even with the idea that anything could happen, nobody, and I mean nobody, was prepared for what was going to happen. And as to why, I guess I should add some context about these two teams. Because before you see the final score, we were about to get an unprecedentedly bad game. I mean bad on levels we didn't even think were possible in the modern era. So who are these two teams, right? Let's start out with the Broncos. Oh boy, the 2023 Broncos, what to even say? Well, the previous year had them as possibly the biggest disappointment in the NFL. Not because they sucked, but because they sucked after one of the biggest blockbuster trades of all time. And man, does this trade need its own context, so we gotta take it back to the 2021 Seahawks, where they just went 7-10, which was a disappointment, and Russell Wilson put up only average numbers with 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and many felt he was actually being held back by the Seahawks system, led by Pete Carroll, and how the offense was generally run. He was, after all, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a QB many thought was gonna be a shoo-in for a golden jacket after he retires, and was often regarded as like a top 8 quarterback in the league at any given year. So after rumors were spreading of the unease in the Seahawks locker room around Russ, early in the offseason, the rumors came true, and Wilson was traded to the Broncos. This absolutely broke the internet when it happened, because the Broncos, many believed, were just a good quarterback away from being contenders. They had a strong defense, great offensive players, a solid line, but with a combination of Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, they were only able to put together a 7-10 season. This trade had many of Broncos fans daydreaming of deep playoffs runs, Super Bowl wins, and being able to consistently beat the Chiefs. That wasn't the only big change though in the league from 2021 to 22. In 21, the 49ers had this young, promising coach named Mike McDaniels, and the Niners just went on their own huge playoff run, and taking somebody out of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree has often paid off. So one of his best offensive minds was brought in to the Dolphins, who could hopefully get their struggling quarterback Tua Tagovailoa on track. But we'll check back with them in a second, because 2022, the Broncos, like I said, sucked. I'm talking about bad on levels even the biggest Broncos haters couldn't have predicted, and I think people would have been okay with them sucking on defense while running up the score on offense, since they just traded for what they thought was their future Super Bowl winning quarterback. But no, it was their anemic offense that couldn't get anything going that highlighted their bad season. During the entire season, they only scored more than 24 points exactly 3 times, and they lost 2 of those games. They ended the season with a paltry 5-12 record, leaving Broncos fans beyond disappointed, feeling like they had been cheated. There was some silver lining though, and that was the firing of Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett, the man that many blame for this bad season. And in one offseason, they hired the coaching legend Sean Payton, giving Broncos fans that rare feeling of hope once again. But back to the Dolphins. That Mike McDaniels hiring seemed to be working out. Their quarterback Tua was starting to reverse his trend of how he played, but unfortunately a couple rough back-to-back concussions gave Tua some short-term regression, deterring their otherwise great-looking season, and dropping from a 7-3 start down to a 9-8 finish, sneaking into the playoffs to lose in a close loss in the first round, which, all things considered, was a good turnaround, more for the perspective of how fans view Tua than the wins, because they simply matched the 9-8 record they put up the previous year, but with a twinge more confidence that they had their guy for rock slinging duties. So this brings us to the 2023 season. The Broncos with new hope after a hiring of a new head coach, the Dolphins looking to show to the league how much adding an extra piece can change their whole game plan, and it started out, well, very similar to last year, but with some slight differences, okay? The Broncos lost their first game in a very similar fashion to how everything was last year. They played good defense, holding the Raiders to 17 points, but unfortunately, their own offensive ineptitude kept them from winning, only being able to put up 16 points. But following week, They did something they had done only 3 times the year prior, which was put up over 24 points. In fact, Russell Wilson put up over 350 yards of total offense himself, showing flashes of the old days that Broncos fans expected. But this game against the Commanders came down to a 2-point conversion to tie the game up, and the Broncos came up just short to lose it. But to this point, many people saw this as a positive trend. Their defense had a good game followed up by their offense having a good game. So now people were thinking both of those could come together, perhaps in a week 3 game against the Dolphins, and they might get their season back on track and get one in the win column. And on the flip side, the Dolphins came out this year the opposite way. They were also playing teams close with a 2-point win over the Chargers, with their offense putting up 36 points, followed by a 7-point win over the Patriots with 24 points in that game, which was a solid win, but honestly none of this was too impressive. So facing down an 0-2 Broncos team boasting a stout defense, they were looking to get that marquee win to prove that they can put up points on anybody. So that brings us to this game, and there's just a little bit more context we should give this. First, the Broncos had a couple injuries coming into this game. The most notable was Justin Simmons, their safety, who was a fundamental part to their defense, being a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro during his 8 seasons with the Broncos. This means missing one of their best over-the-top players. Their matchup against the Dolphins was going to be a little bit sketchy, especially since the Dolphins loved to throw the ball. So while this may be a cause for concern, even Vegas wasn't able to remotely predict what was about to happen, with the Dolphins being 6-point favors and the over-under being set at 47.5 points. So now, with all of this context being given, let's go back to that opening statement. The game had no expectations. A 1-touchdown favorite, 2 teams just hoping to put together a more complete performance in their previous 2 games. And as we cut to the end though, it was pure, unadulterated, unfiltered, raw, never-ending torture for the Broncos. The only way I can describe how effective the Dolphins offense was against them was by that meme from a video way back in the day where the kid was doing trick shots, and no matter how comedically bad the shot was, how it was purely shown that the basketball could have in no way made it into the hoop, the clip always cuts to the ball going in. That's what happened. No matter what play the Dolphins ran, no matter how crazy their drive started, 10 of their 13 drives ended in touchdowns. That's right, 70 points all on scrimmage plays from the offense, an NFL record if you weren't able to piece that together. No fluke fumble recoveries, no blocked punts, no blocked field goals, no pick six, just a bunch of scrimmage plays to score. It was a deep ball? Okay, touchdown. What if we run it up the middle? Oh yeah, also a touchdown. Shovel pass? Touchdown. Backup quarterback with the deep ball. Guess what? Also a touchdown. Backup quarterback handing off the ball? Guess what? That's going to be a touchdown too. And the worst part is, the game even seemed somewhat close at first. The Broncos' first 3 drives went like this: punt, touchdown, field goal. They put up 10 points, the Dolphins put up 21, which is a reasonable score to say the least. But one punt, a fumble, and a field goal later, suddenly it was 35-13. And then by the time they got through their next 4 drives, the score was suddenly 63-13 with a long 9 minutes left in the 4th. It was just the perfect storm, and the Broncos offense still couldn't seem to get going to keep the opposing offense off the field. No help over the top meant the Dolphins could move the ball in the air at will, and their only drives that didn't end with points required a failed run on 4th and 1 and running the ball twice in a poor screen pass on 3rd and 1 with their backup quarterback in garbage time up by a measly 43 points. And you may be saying, Isaac, this is surely a disgusting game, but it can't be the worst because at least the Dolphins are enjoying the win. And while I'd argue that seeing a team that's supposed to be filled with professionals get numbers put up on them in the worst fashion since the ages when it was teachers playing against mailmen in a game is in no way entertaining to anybody, there is something that I think was a disgrace of football at this moment. In the waning seconds of the game, the Dolphins have already put up 70 points despite their best efforts to not run up the score anymore. A standard run up the middle results in 52 yards being gained, putting the Dolphins right into field goal range. A couple more handoffs for no gain, and the Dolphins have a decision to make. You see, 70 points is insane. They've already set a record for being the first team to put up over 350 yards of passing and rushing in the same game. They already have 726 total yards of offense. But what they're missing is that elusive and once in a lifetime opportunity to score the most points in NFL history. You see, the last 70-point game was set in 1966, and as the NFL has become more and more competitive and there's been more parity amongst teams, games getting these numbers has become extremely rare, meaning that the Mike McDaniel's offense could forever be set in stone if he just kicks the field goal, making this game not just some absolutely ridiculous showing of perfect circumstances, but a marquee moment in NFL history for the most points to ever be scored. But he trots out the offense and takes a knee, showing mercy and ending the game, in my opinion, the most disappointing way possible. Meaning the biggest blowout in NFL history will just be that. No more significance than a wacky Sunday 1 p.m. football game that only people like myself would care about. Since this game, things leveled out, believe it or not. The Dolphins actually got smacked the following week, 48-20, and the Broncos also bounced back the next week, beating the Bears, and even went on a 5-game winning streak with some actually impressive wins over the Chiefs and the Bills, who ultimately were the team that beat the Dolphins after their massacre of the Broncos, sort of completing this weird circle. Ultimately, this game is now nothing more than a weird footnote in a 2023 season, unless the Dolphins maybe go on to win the Super Bowl, but I think everybody walked away from this game feeling just a little bit more disappointed than when they started watching it. Now, if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing. These longer videos I make are going to be coming more and more as the offseason gets closer, and I'd love to know what your initial reaction to this game was in the comments. Anyway, have a good day and peace.
The all-time record if they'd like. That'll do it.